I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Lisa Lundy, whom I thank for sharing her expertise with the department. So Dr. Lundy is a professor in the Department of Agricultural Education and Communication at the University of Florida. She serves as the undergraduate coordinator for the department, as well as an affiliate faculty member of the Center for Public Issues Education, which is also called the PI Center. Lundy is a three-time alumna of the University of Florida, receiving her BS in advertising in 1999, her MS in 2001, and PhD in 2004 in agricultural education and communication. Lundy is an accredited public relations professional and worked in higher education and nonprofit public relations. From 2004 to 2015, she was on faculty at Louisiana State University in the Manship School of Mass Communication, and she served as the Manship School as Associate Dean for Sponsored Research and Programs from 2010 through 2012. So with that, I will welcome Dr. Lundy, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you. It is really nice to be with you all. I was trying to think back of times that I've been to your campus, and I was there in graduate school for a conference and really loved visiting your campus. It's a gorgeous campus, and it was my pleasure to be there, and it's my pleasure to be with you all today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, jump into this presentation. Okay, can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. All right. So this is a little bit different presentation than I normally do, talking about a specific research project. I'm actually going to share a little bit of my own personal story with you all. And so I hope you'll bear with me on that. It's always a little nerve-wracking when you share your story, but I think it's relevant, and it's taught me some important things about science communication. But first, let me tell you a little bit about my background and what I do at the University of Florida. So my appointment at the University of Florida is a three-way split appointment that's kind of tailored to focus on in a couple of areas. So I have a 60% teaching, 30% extension, and 10% research appointment. So for my teaching, I teach classes in social media and public opinion, communication theory, policy communication. And then for my research and extension, my program is focused on helping scientists translate their research and their work to audiences that need to know what they're learning. So that's what I focus on. And I have a couple of pictures here just with students in the policy communication class I teach, and working with some different scientists and agricultural producers. So to set the stage for what I'm going to tell you about today, this is my daughter, Kate. And in summer of 2018, our family was on vacation and in Georgia. And Kate began to get very sick very fast. Within the span of a few days, she went from seeming normal to us to having a very hard time even breathing, not eating anything, extremely lethargic and tired. And we were really at a loss for what was happening with her. So we rushed back to Florida, made an appointment for our doctor the next day. We're really worried that night, so we ended up taking her to the emergency room. And within an hour, they had her in the intensive care unit. She was really very, very sick, and diagnosed almost immediately by them at the hospital as a type 1 diabetic. I didn't know anything about type 1 diabetes at that time. Maybe some of you do. If you do, you'll probably know some of what I'm going to share with you today, but I didn't. And so I had to learn a lot quickly. And I like to always take this opportunity just to share a little bit of what I've learned, because some of you may be faced with a loved one who faces this at some point in your life. So just to distinguish a little bit between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, there are some overlap between the two, but they're pretty different conditions. So in type 1, which is what she has, your pancreas doesn't make enough insulin, or in some cases really any insulin, for your body. So it's in the past been referred to as juvenile diabetes. But it really affects people at any age. So it's something I certainly would want you to know about if you aren't familiar with it. I've included here some of the symptoms, some of the things that you can look out for, signs of type 1 diabetes. Looking back now, science communication is so important because these are all things that she was experiencing, but we weren't aware that these were symptoms of type 1 diabetes. So it is a chronic autoimmune condition where the body's own immune system attacks and destroys beta cells in the pancreas that produce insulin. And so, and consequently, if you have type 1 diabetes, you have to take insulin to be able to help regulate the functions of your pancreas. So she does that now, and she's a healthy, almost 13-year-old with all the attitudes and emotions that come along with a 13-year-old. And she's doing well. But this has taught me a lot in the last couple of years. We've gone through these life changes. She's gone through these life changes when you go to experiencing a chronic illness, which some of you maybe have experienced that, changes your priorities. It really changes your identity in terms of how you see yourself and how you interact with the world around you. It certainly has implications for your safety and your health on a daily basis. One that I really see a lot with her is changes your routines. There's no days off. You have to deal with this illness every day. And it's a series of decisions that you have to make all day long, every day. And I included this graphic just to kind of give you a sense of what life is like as a type 1 diabetic. All throughout the day, you're evaluating data, you're looking at, you know, how much, what's your current blood glucose level, how many carbs are you going to be eating or drinking, what's your activity level, and trying to take all that data and turn it into decisions about how much insulin to take and how to take care of yourself. But like many things in life, it gets better with science. It gets better with lots of things, support from family and friends, but science definitely helps us face this illness for her and help her face the illness. There's technology that she uses. She wears a continuous glucose monitor every day that helps us be able to get readings every 5 minutes of what her blood glucose level is. She also has participated in treatment studies here at the University of Florida, patient education programs, research trials. So there's all these things that science is doing to help us navigate her illness. So as I have parented her through this experience, I've tried to think a lot about what I have learned through this experience that maybe can make me be a more empathetic communicator with other people when I communicate about science or when I work with scientists to help them feel competent to communicate about science. And that's what I want to share with you today is some of those things that I've learned. I love this quote from Simon and Garfunkel: "A man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest." I don't know if any of you are Simon and Garfunkel fans. I am. I think that that's true of all of us as consumers of information, as receivers of information. I've certainly found it to be true when receiving information about this particular situation that we've faced as a family. And so for me, this is my daughter and her doctor, her endocrinologist. I have found, and maybe some of you have experienced this because you are scientists in your life, that information feels like power and control a lot of times in situations. Like we can do something to take back control of the situation. So I remember one day we went into an appointment with my daughter's physician, and I had a pile of research studies. This was in year 1 post-diagnosis. And I had spent all this time pulling up all these research studies of possible cures and possible treatments and all these things at the end of the appointment that I wanted to show her and say, why don't we try this? Maybe we could try this. How about this? What do you think about this one? And she very kindly kind of looked through things and then said to me, let's look at some of these studies. Let's look at the sample size. Let's look at the methods. Let's deconstruct this study like you would with your students in your office when they come in and want to look at a study with you. And let's see if they're credible or if they're maybe not that credible as research. And so I've thought about that appointment so many times in the last couple of years as I've thought about how we process information and how we make sense of the world around us. I love this quote. This is from the book, The Skeptic's Guide from the Universe. And it says, some information, some ideas feel like our allies. We want them to win. We want to defend them. And other information or ideas are the enemy. We want to shoot them down. And that could be something political or ideological, or it could be a possible cure for an illness for your child that you really want to be true and you want to be effective, but the data doesn't really support that. So I've looked into a lot in the last couple of years, the theory of motivated reasoning, which probably, let me go back, looking too quickly here, which probably a lot of you are already familiar with. But a couple of slides here to kind of give you some context for some of the reading I've done on motivated reasoning. This from 1990 from Kunda's work. People rely on cognitive processes and representations to arrive at their desired conclusions, but motivation plays a role in determining which of these will be used on a given occasion. So when we think about how we receive the information that comes to us about issues that we care about or decisions that we're making, what role does our motivation, do our values, do the things that we care about play in how we're going to sort through that information and make decisions? And this is another one from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Motivated reasoning is further facilitated by the fact that much of our information is subjective or requires some judgment. No scientific study is perfect, so you can always point to limitations if you want to deny the conclusions. No source is impeccable, and people make mistakes, so perhaps this is one. Different sources say different things, so you can choose to believe the one that reduces your cognitive dissonance. And we can probably all relate to having done this in our life, of looking at the evidence that's presented to us and sometimes being really receptive to it because it supports something that we already believe or we've already experienced. And other times maybe rejecting that information because it's contrary to what we believe. This can result in us having a couple of different types of goals. Sometimes we are pursuing directional goals where that lead us to kind of sort through information to support an opinion that's consistent with our identity and beliefs. Whereas other times we're pursuing accuracy goals. We're really trying to seek out information that helps us to make our opinion or our knowledge as correct as possible. And it's kind of a matter of whether we can overcome the confirmation bias that we all have. This affects how we go about recruiting evidence, what we expose ourselves to, selective exposure, what we pay attention to, what we elaborate on and think more about, and also how we evaluate that evidence, how we sort through it. So, how does this affect the work that I do? Why am I telling you about this? It's an interesting story from our experience, but what does it have to do with you? I think it's really helped me think about some of the challenges that I face as an audience member for science communication. And ultimately, we all really want to understand our audiences so that we can be more effective in our communication with them. So it's certainly, as I've thought about the way that I process information and motivated reasoning, that's one challenge I face. Another challenge I face, and this is from the probably a source that many of you have read before, the Committee on Science of I'm picking that up, Science Communication, the Research Agenda. Many people have difficulty understanding the quantitative and probabilistic information that frequently is the language of science. Problems with numeracy frequently affect even scientists operating outside of their area of expertise. So dealing with numbers and statistics and making sense of what those things mean for us in a given situation is certainly a challenge that we face. oftentimes parenting a child with an illness that happens in the middle of the night, which is another confounding challenge. I'm also susceptible to social influences and the way that I process information. As a parent of a child with type 1 diabetes, I pay attention to several Facebook groups with other parents sharing information. Sometimes those things can be really helpful and can prompt me to maybe check out a new resource or a new treatment or a new medicine. Sometimes they might cause me cognitive dissonance based on a decision that I've already made, to see somebody else saying that they made a different decision or challenging that decision. I've also noticed that these parent groups, these social support groups are a huge starting point for families when they are first diagnosed, when a child or a family member is first diagnosed, really with any illness. We've seen this to be true in cancer communication as well, that people go to these networks of people who have faced something similar to them, and they're looking for, where should I start? What questions should I be asking? What resources can I trust? And so these social influences are huge when it comes to health communication across the board. Another challenge that I face as an audience member is that I have different information needs at different stages of my journey, as do we all. So my daughter just started playing soccer on her middle school soccer team. So we're now evaluating, how do we manage blood sugar when we're playing a sport, when we're away from the family for long periods of time. When I'm faced with decisions about new technology for her, that's a glucose monitor or possibly having a pump. There's lots of technology to evaluate. I need different information for different stages of the journey. When we flew for the first time as a family after she was diagnosed, how do you take all of this gear and get through the airport with it? So that's an important thing for me in thinking about audiences that I communicate with or that I help to communicate with, is where are they at in the process of their journey, and what specific information do they need for where they are right now. So in thinking about how this has informed the work that I do, like I said, a large part of my research and extension is in equipping scientists to translate their research. And a lot of the work within that I do is associated with the center that I sent you all an email, the center's website. It's the Southeastern Coastal Center for Agricultural Health and Safety. So our center is part of a national network of 10 similar centers around the country that are geographically distributed so that they can meet the needs of the whole United States. Our center is part of is funded by the CDC and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. And we look to do research. We're not a regulatory center. We're a research center that looks to address occupational safety and health needs of people working in farming, fishing, and forestry, really across the Southeast and in Puerto Rico. So our center's research focuses primarily on coastal fishery worker safety and health, pesticide and herbicide exposure, and heat stress and heat illness, which are huge issues everywhere, but definitely in the Southeast. So right now we've been doing a lot of work this year, focused obviously on COVID-19, as have we all. And we did a lot of work early on helping workers and producers know how to get access to testing. COVID exposure was a huge concern for worker populations, many of whom live in close proximity and work in close proximity. So we did a lot early on with testing, and now we're doing a lot with vaccines. And we've talked about this issue of timing that I just mentioned, that we have to think about, when are vaccines actually going to be available to people, and timing our communication efforts to go along with that timeline. So we've been working on messaging, putting together a toolkit for extension professionals across the Southeast to be able to communicate with people in their counties about vaccine availability, vaccine safety, vaccine efficacy, all of those things. And then specifically, if we think back to motivated reasoning, things that they would specifically might maybe be concerned about. So what if I have allergies? What if I'm pregnant or trying to get pregnant? What if I have an immune system that's compromised in some way? So specific messaging that speaks to each of those concerns. We have also put together for the last 3 falls a state of the science meeting to bring together scientists in an interdisciplinary effort who work in a lot of different areas focused on one particular issue that affects workers. So one year we focused on heat stress, and it was really interesting because we brought together people who work and look at heat related illness in like sports training, the military, so from other fields to help us understand how to communicate about heat stress for agricultural workers. The second year we focused on mental health issues in agricultural, vulnerable, and rural communities. So how to help communicate about mental health issues and also opioid abuse in those communities. And then this past year, we focused on COVID-19 and the communication efforts and research efforts related to workers, specifically related to COVID-19. We have put together a community stakeholder advisory board to help us really be able to listen to people who are from agricultural industry, represent different industry sectors, farm worker organizations, public agencies. Like I said, we're not a regulatory or training organization, but we need to know what affects those organizations. So they have representation on our board, and then cooperative extension in each of the states that we work with in Puerto Rico. And the Virgin Islands. I keep forgetting to say in the Virgin Islands. These are some recent messages, as I talked about, that we've been putting together related to vaccine safety and efficacy. So specifically trying to address some concerns that people in our audience might have. And I know I shared the website with you, but I'm just going to click over and stop sharing this. So just to show you some of the resources on this website that might be of interest to you, you can see different research projects that we've done in the center over the last 5 years. So we have the 3 primary research projects, and then we have pilot projects in a lot of different areas. And then you can see different education and training that we've done. We've done a lot of webinars on all these different topics. And then white papers that we've put together, videos, and there's videos from those different State of the Science meetings. So if you have interest in seeing kind of the work that we've done, you can find that there as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking and open this up for any questions that you might have for me about anything that I've talked about, the work of the center, motivated reasoning. I'm not an expert in motivated reasoning, but I'll do my best to answer your questions. And I'm excited to hear what you all have to ask.